I just kind of felt like, yeah, this is like a very solid romance book, and that's about it. Okay, so it's now time for my August wrap up, which is crazy. I feel like this summer just like really whizzed past me so fast, and part of me is like, I think it might be because of how many romance books I read this summer. It was really exciting, and I just absolutely devoured as many summer romances as I possibly could, and this is definitely reflected in my August wrap up. So I'm so excited to talk about these books with you guys, and I cannot wait to get into it. I ended up reading 6 books in the month of August, and we're just gonna start right off with the first book that I read, which was The Vows by Jessica Joyce. And this is a super popular romance book. I have seen this book literally everywhere. I've seen it recommended so many times, and even while I was reading the book, I had seen multiple comments, multiple videos talking about how much people have absolutely loved The Vows. Unfortunately for me, I just felt like this book was very middle of the road, and I'm not sure if that's just because like it's a book that didn't work for me, or if there's like another reason, or something that I personally think might be the reason is that I read so many romance books this season that in the grand scheme of things, this one just did not stick out to me. This one just did not do the things that like other better romance books did, and I just wasn't impressed. Basically, The Vows follows these 2 characters, and they used to be in a relationship, and they are kind of part of this really tight-knit, close friend group, and they end up breaking up, and they haven't seen each other in a while, and they kind of have to come back together because of their mutual friend's wedding, and they kind of have to play nice and get along with each other, and there's like still a lot of unresolved emotions there. And I've definitely seen this plot, this trope kind of play out in a lot of different books, and some of them that are like my all-time favorite books. Like, for example, there's Happy Place by Emily Henry, which is one of my favorite Emily Henry books and kind of like one of my favorite romance books in general. So I really enjoy this plot. I enjoy the trope of like these 2 characters who are part of a huge friend group coming back together and having to resolve a lot of like their past relationship issues. However, this one just did not stand out to me in the slightest. Like, it wasn't a bad book by any means. It just wasn't a fresh or interesting take on this trope, and I just kind of left with a feeling of like, okay, so I just read a book and it was fine, and now we move on to the next one. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't stand out to me. Nothing really affected me emotionally. I just kind of felt like, yeah, this is like a very solid romance book, and that's about it. I just didn't really feel any sort of emotional connection to the main characters or to their romance, and it's really hard to talk about these kind of books where I feel like they're just very meh, because what do you really say about it? Like, it wasn't necessarily great and it wasn't necessarily bad. So I'm not sure why this book is so intensely hyped. Maybe other people just like found other things about it that they like more than what I found in it. But yeah, this book just really didn't do anything for me, unfortunately. The next book that I read in August was Love is a War Song by Danica Nava, and this is Danica Nava's second romance book, and I really enjoyed her first one, which was The Truth According to Ember. I read that I think last year, and I ended up giving that one I think about a 4 out of 5 stars, 4.5 stars, something like that. And I really enjoyed that book, so I was so excited to get to Love is a War Song, and unfortunately I did not like this book. Basically, this follows the main character, and she is a Native American pop star, and this book is kind of modeled a little bit after movies like the Hannah Montana movie. And I think that is mainly where my issues kind of arose, because I really love the idea of this like Native American pop star who is kind of disconnected from her culture, but through a series of events she has to go back and reconnect and find out more about her indigenous culture. However, I really had more of an issue with like taking so much inspiration from the Hannah Montana movie. when we're dealing with adult characters who are living adult lives. And it just felt like there was a bit of a disconnect. I think maybe this book and the plot might have been a bit more effective if it was maybe a YA book or a middle grade book, because then a lot of the things that the main character does would have been a bit more believable to me. But when we're dealing with adult characters who are living adult lives and experiencing adult situations, it just feels a little bit ridiculous to put them into these like Hannah Montana-esque situations, if that makes sense. Like, it just doesn't fit very well. It doesn't flow very well. It really gave me so much secondhand embarrassment that it was nearly unbearable. And so for me, I just felt like I could not get into this book. I could not connect with the main character because of how much secondhand embarrassment I was getting and how I felt like she was truly acting so deeply immature, and immature in ways that like just do not make sense for a real life adult to make. And that's why I just feel like if we're going to write a contemporary romance novel, if we're going to base this off of like real life situations, let's make this book middle grade. Let's make this book maybe YA, like a lower YA. And so I think that's mainly where a lot of my issues came from, is that just there's so many instances or so many scenes where I'm just like, there's no way this character, specifically this female main character, is this stupid. It felt almost offensive to me, like, to see a specifically female main character being characterized this way. And I see this happen every once in a while in specifically romance books, where the female main character is characterized as a bit of a dolt, as a bit of like a just like airheaded, stupid, bumbling fool. And I just personally don't like to read about female characters acting that way. I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's charming. I don't think it's adorable. It's really off-putting to me. So I just could not connect with this book. I really, really loved the conversations about reconnecting, and I really loved seeing this main character getting to experience a lot of like the indigenous culture that she didn't get to experience as a child. So I really appreciated this book in that way. It was just like, it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to read. It was not fun. I didn't have a good time. And that is a big chunk of how I critique or how I react to books. The next book I ended up reading was Lost and Lassoed by Lyla Sage, and this one is another one that I just felt kind of meh about. It was really fun. I really liked it. I think I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars, which, I mean, I'm kind of going back and forth of whether I agree with that rating. I might want to lower it. I'm not quite sure, but this is another one where I felt just very middle of the road about it. And this is another book that also got really hyped. So that could also be kind of part of the pattern of like reading really hyped books and then just kind of feeling meh about them, feeling like they were just kind of like whatever. This book follows these two main characters, and they have kind of always had a little bit of like a rivalry where they like butt heads, and they're just like, they don't really seem like they're compatible, but they do kind of have like this very fun sort of enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers sort of thing going on. However, the male main character, he is a single dad, and he ends up having to take care of his daughter for the summer, and he needs a little bit of help because he also runs a huge ranch, and he kind of does it not necessarily like on his own, but he is like in charge of a lot of it. So he needs some help kind of taking care of his daughter, and so he recruits the female main character who he has that kind of like enemies to lovers sort of thing going on with. And this book is really charming and it is really cute. However, I feel like my main issue with this book is that I felt like we didn't really get to see the two main characters on their own, developing their relationship on their own and exploring what that would mean as two adult people. I feel like the majority of this book is the male main character falling in love with the female main character because of the way that she acts with his daughter. and the way that she treats her and the way that she takes care of her. And I feel like he doesn't really get to see her as her own person outside of what she could mean to the family unit. And that was mainly my issue with this book. And of course, I mean, there were obviously scenes of them together alone. I just felt like so much of their relationship dynamic and so much of that development happened because she fits so well into the daughter's life and into the family unit in general. So that was my main issue with this book and this romance. I felt like it would have been a lot stronger if maybe the plot wasn't so directly tied to the daughter coming home for summer. So personally, wasn't like a huge fan of this book. There were moments that I really liked, and I loved Lyla Sage's writing style. I really love the way that she has developed this world. It's very complex and layered and interesting and very well developed. However, it was just like really the romance between these two characters that felt a little bit iffy to me, that didn't really feel super believable. And yeah, that's basically why I ended up not really totally loving this book. And now that I'm talking about it out loud, I feel like maybe I should lower the rating a little bit. I'm thinking maybe more along the lines of like a 3-star rating. I'm starting to realize that the first 4 books that I read in the month of August, I did not really enjoy. And the next book is A 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. And it's not necessarily that I didn't like this book, it's just that I didn't end up loving it the way that I thought I would. And it's another book that has been super, super hyped. A lot of people really love this book. Unfortunately for me, it just didn't hit the way that I expected for it to hit. And honestly, I've had a little bit of a complicated history with Ashley Poston's work. Sometimes I really like it, sometimes I don't really like it at all, sometimes I feel very meh about it. So it's just been a little bit of a mixed bag with me and Ashley Poston. I believe I've read like 3 books from her in the past. 2 of them have been her YA books, and another one has been the adult romance that I DNF'd. I believe that was A Dead Romantics, which I really did not like. And so going into this book, I kind of knew that it could really go either way. And I really hoped that it would go in a more positive direction. And there were a lot of parts that I really did like about this book. I liked the portal romance sort of idea. I thought that was really interesting. I think that the 2 big issues for me were that I really didn't like the ending. I felt like the ending was really rushed and kind of wrapped up together really quickly. And also, this is the pettiest reason I have not liked a book, or at least like this is like one petty like critique that I've ever had for a book, and that is I read this as an audiobook, and the male main character's name is Ewan, and maybe it would have been a little bit better if I had read this physically and I didn't have to hear the name Ewan 20,000 times in the audiobook. But for me, when I hear Ewan, it's 2 things. First of all, I think of Ewoks from Star Wars, and it doesn't really work for me in a romance setting to hear Ewan and correlate that to Ewok. Weird. And the second reason is that like I kept wanting it to be Ewan. I kept wanting it to be Ewan. I think it would have flowed better if it was Ewan. I think it would have just sounded nicer in my ear if it was Ewan. And so I just, Ewan was hard. Ewan was hard. I actually thought at first that the audiobook narrator was mispronouncing Ewan as Ewan. And then I looked it up and it's spelled I-W-A-N, which made me realize that it wasn't a mispronunciation. It was just, that's how the name is said, I guess. And so it really got me thinking, I'm like, maybe it would have been better if I had read this book physically. Maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. Maybe I wouldn't have felt so like jolted out of the story every time I heard the name Ewan and thought of the little Ewoks in Star Wars. So I did still end up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, mainly because I really liked the female main character. I really liked the plot of basically like this female main character. She has recently lost her really close aunt, and she had this really great New York apartment, and a lot of magical things kind of happened in there, and the female main character ends up inheriting the apartment from her aunt and lives in the apartment, and one day she is coming back to the apartment and she is transported into the past and runs into the male main character, and it's like a really fun and interesting plot, and a lot of that I really enjoyed. I really liked the romance between these two characters. I really liked the discussions on grief, and really those two little critiques were like the only negatives that I had about this book. Otherwise, it was a really fun read and I did really end up enjoying it. The second to last book that I ended up reading in August was Not in My Book by Katie Holt. And this was a really cute and fun romance book. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars, and it was one of my favorite books that I read this month. It was absolutely fantastic. And this book follows the two main characters, and they are both in this writing workshop and are working on finishing a novel. However, the female main character, she mainly writes romance books, and the male main character mainly writes literary fiction, and so they've always kind of butted heads within this workshop and within class. And they have always kind of been known to butt heads throughout every class they've ever taken together. However, all of that kind of comes to a head, and the professor's kind of like, I'm sick of it, I'm sick of you two fighting, and so in order to get you guys to get along and to finish this class, I need you guys to do the project together. You guys have to finish a book together and incorporate elements of romance and also literary fiction. And so they end up having to get together and get into this group project, and it's such a fun time. I love these characters so much. I love the romance between them, and honestly this book feels so much like a late 90s early 2000s rom-com. It's so perfect. It's just like, it's so cinematic. It's just like the emotions are so perfect, the setting is perfect, all of the scenes just flow together so perfectly. And this book, it's really funny because it's been recommended to fans of Beach Read, which Beach Read is one of my favorite Emily Henry books of all time. And I have to say that as much as I like both of these books, this one is definitely not at all similar to Beach Read. I know it kind of sounds similar in like very vague terms. However, it's just, they're not the same at all. Very different vibes, very different plots. It's just like, it's not quite similar at all. Like, so I'm not really sure where the comparison comes from, but I still did really enjoy this book. I absolutely loved it, and I highly recommend it to anybody. This is one of the few books in this wrap up that I wholeheartedly, fully 100% recommend. And the very last book that I read in August was A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Rum, and this is a Palestinian author. I have read another book from her in the past, and that was Evil Eye, and I really enjoyed that book. I believe that might be in either my 2024 or 2023 favorites like video. I can't remember. I think it was 2024. But anyway, I really enjoyed that book, and so I knew that I had to pick up A Woman Is No Man, and I absolutely loved this book. It's kind of like a family drama, and it's about this family, and they have moved from Palestine to New York and are kind of building their life there, and there's a lot of drama within this family. It's very complex, and if you know me, you know I love like a family drama. You know I love family dynamics and stories that really revolve around how a family operates within like culture and within where they're living and within all the things that are happening around them. I really love it. And this book was so intriguing, so heartbreaking, so tough, just a very tough read, but also very emotional. And we're dealing a lot with like familial expectations, with cultural expectations, and trying to navigate the difference between the cultural expectations of Palestine and the cultural expectations of the US, and just kind of like how that all sort of melts together, and watching all of these family members kind of go on their own separate journeys, but also how they overlap. And it was just so beautifully done and so expertly executed, and I really loved this book so much. If you read any of the books that I talk about in this video, definitely make it Not in My Book and A Woman Is No Man. They are such great reads. I absolutely adored these books. And yeah, I really had an interesting reading month in August. I felt like we kind of went from like bad to mad to good, if that makes sense. Like I had like kind of a roller coaster of emotions throughout this reading month. There are a few books that I started in August that I will probably have to finish in September, so that'll be really interesting. But overall, I felt like I had a really good reading month. I ended up reading 6 books, and that is absolutely fantastic. And despite everything, I just had a really fun time, and that is all that matters. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know in the comments down below if you read any really great books in August, and if you have any good plans for September. Definitely let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below. I should probably stop saying Twitter because I'm not really on Twitter very often. I should say Threads. Anyway, all of my links are down below. Definitely check it out in the description, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!